Then the other obstacle, which I think had just been overcome right before that, was the moving of the body from New York to Peoria. That was the political part of things. Well, all the court cases that were launched to get Sheen moved from New York to Peoria by his niece, Joan Cunningham, she won every one of them. The local, the appellate, and the state Supreme Court of New York all upheld she had the right to place her uncle where she thought fit. So that happened, and literally within about 48 hours, 72 hours, Sheen was moved from St. Patrick Cathedral, like in the dead of night. It was like a movie, unceremoniously to Peoria. So with thanks to the church militant, we did get some footage of it. And then, anyway, so Peoria received them. So you had the miracle proved, his body's there, and then all of a sudden, okay, let's get this mass going. And so Peoria scheduled it. Within a couple of months, they had the mass. So when you got to the point of the decree of the miracle, the church is saying he's blessed. At the massive beatification, there's simply a formula at one point that's stated that proclaims him to the whole world as blessed. But nothing's going to ever change the fact that Fulton Sheen has achieved, when I use the word, fulfilled all the requirements to become blessed of her life being venerable and an approved miracle. So that can't change. And if the church says they made a mistake, that will throw the biggest wrench into the church and the Holy Spirit and discernment of what it does, like we've never seen before. So we technically it's blessed Sheen. So anyway, so they said we want to wait for this report, and it hasn't come out. The report is irrelevant because we talked, my wife and I, with the Sheen movement. That's what started the whole Sheen movement. You said enough is enough. We talked to Peoria, and they said, okay, well, is this going to change anything? Even if they said Sheen's the Antichrist, is that going to change anything? And they said, no, we know everything. Every potential thing that could possibly come up, we've already dealt with. Rome's dealt with it. So, anyway, so like, then what's the holdup? We want everything to be right with everybody. That would be like another miracle for Sheen. And the next thing is, in a recent interview with Raymond Arroyo, it was really precipitated or sparked, you could say, by the work of our movement, because we're holding the fire to under the feet of those involved. Raymond did a great job basically putting the whole case on trial with the Diocese of Peoria, saying, well, look, there's nothing that's going to change with the Diocese of New York report. And so what's the holdup? And Monsignor Gray was there, said, well, there isn't any holdup. Rome's totally fine with us doing it next week. He didn't say the next week part, like they have no problems at all. So he said the problem's on this side of the pond. At that point, that's the problem with these individuals. That at this point, it's going against Rome and their declaration, and it's a big deal. So this is kind of basically what we're up against. Then on top of that, Monsignor Gray said, well, once this report comes out, that's what they want to wait for, then it'll verify what we already know. And then he added something else. He says, we want to have the unanimous support of the bishops when we do this. I know everybody's like, oh. Because that's another miracle. That is Sheen's third miracle that the first canonization. So anyway, that's how close we are. That's how we have a petition movement, because Sheen has said over and over, well, we say it over and over, he said it once, who's going to save the church? And how? He says, you the people, make sure your bishops act like bishops and the priests act like priests. That's why we're pushing, and we're so close. And the petition drive is to give the voice to all of the faithful, of the people that he's talking about, saying, we're not like we want our saint, like we know he's a saint. It's what his beatification will mean to the whole world, like Father at Mass, who discovered Sheen from a book in Burma. I thought about that. But when talk about having the ability to proclaim to the world somebody who's a loyal son of the church and saying this guy's going to show you the way, the beatification is going to help to do that. So, Terry, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that.
You're right, guys. I love what you just said, because and this goes back on Fulton Sheen, there are people in America who dislike Fulton Sheen, including the clergy. I'll give you an example. When I was in New York, December 13th, 1979, Fulton J. Sheen's funeral. Many, many people talked to me about that. But I'll give you an even a better example. On my left, there's a picture of a very prominent pope. His name was St. John Paul II, October 2nd, 1979. 60 days before he was called home. The Holy Father gives Bishop Sheen a hug and says, "You have written and spoken well of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. You are a loyal son of the church." And gives him a big hug. That says it all, right? But what happened that day is when John Paul II came to America, two things. He was so impressed with Fulton Sheen's writings and recordings. What did he do? Maybe you know this already. He actually took cassette tapes of Fulton Sheen and listened to the priest retreat for two reasons. One, to get his insights on the priesthood, and also to help him with his English. So when he went to America, he had just heard a priest retreat by Fulton Sheen. How many of you knew that one? I mean, wasn't that amazing? Found that out from another friend. So here's what Fulton Sheen did. When the Pope was coming to St. Patrick's Cathedral, where he was buried originally, right? He's down in the basement, right? The crypt of the church. Because the bishops didn't have a place for Bishop Sheen to be in the audience with the Holy Father. You wonder why? You know what they say in the church? Original sin is alive and well. You know? They didn't want Bishop Sheen there. So what does John Paul II do? Walks in and he's greeting everybody and says, "Where's Fulton Sheen?" And the bishops and the cardinals go, Holy, I don't know. "You get him back and bring him right up here. Put a chair right here. I want one for Sheen. Now!" "Yes, Holy Father." So that's what happened. That's how Bishop Sheen made that connection with the Pope. Now, why am I bringing it up? Peter's making a great statement about why Fulton Sheen hasn't been beatified. I'm a little bit, I kind of go with what Bishop Robert Barron said years ago when he said, a church that's not precise is a corrupt church. He said that. And so Bishop Sheen is very precise. He's a man who believes in original sin. And I would say there are people walking around in the church today that would be very uncomfortable if we had to look at Fulton Sheen as a saint, because they don't agree with what Sheen has taught, because what we're teaching is what we call the deposit of faith, the perennial teachings of the church. And I would add that I believe that's another element on why Bishop Sheen isn't being beatified, because of the pride that we have in the American church. And I would say we probably could use a little humility to say, well, maybe our efforts in evangelization, which are very little in the church today, maybe we could learn something from a man who brought 500,000 souls into the church in the 1950s. Just maybe.
Yeah, when you look just at the numbers of when she was in his prime, his television show, he reached 30 million people a week. This is pre-digital age. And there are 30 hours for every 30-minute television series. And then he would write it out, he'd go through it, and then he would then write it in French and Italian, and then give it to people who spoke those languages and says, "Am I clear?" Because when you put it in a different language, even when you're fluent, there is a sort of a reduction of your wording, because you're not as easy. And so you're going to use more common words. So Sheen, and then he would take that critique, and then he'd make his final version, and then he'd memorize it. And then, of course, we all know he was completely choreographed to the end. Every gesture, everything, down to the final second. I met somebody who worked in Chicago and watched him just from the production point of view. And they said that it was masterful, no matter where he was. At a certain point, he would completely shift himself into a certain gear based on this moment in the clock, wherever he was and nobody would know how perfect it was, that he had telegraphed to the end. And, so he was a man who had great clarity. And I think that with the petition movement too, one of the things we've learned, because when people go and they sign a petition, which is very simple, I haven't even mentioned it in this, if you go to fultonsheenmovement.com, it's right there. It only takes 15 seconds to do. We have we invite people to share their testimonies, and we get stories literally from around the world of somebody who met him, in their life. Not kind of like the story that Terry might, I think, will share later. I won't spoil it on an airplane. But like she had all these encounters. I mean, these aren't like, oh, I remember the days when my mother would tell everybody to stop and watch Sheen. I heard that a lot. But these are people who, like my father's story at Mass. I was searching for something in my life. I was completely, I was aimless. And then all of a sudden, I watched one thing or I got a book. And in some cases, our paths crossed. And from that moment on, their lives were never the same. And that's a big point, a major, I think the most important point behind the movement part is that, I'm going to talk about this in my second talk, is because I don't know of any soul who's in any way, not just heard about him, but has read or listened to something of him who hasn't had their life touched in a significant way. If you remember that person said, oh yeah, he said this and it really hit me, that's significant. When Sheen says something, people listen. And he always attributed that to the Holy Hour. So that's why I'm really looking forward to Terry's talk, is to get a lot of the stories of Sheen's, because they're so inspiring and they're also compelling. But just imagine when the announcement of beatification comes, there is no greater ad money you can put into Facebook, YouTube, or any of these things that matches the church proclaiming what Terry was just saying about with John Paul and Sheen, that this man is a loyal son of the church. He has written and spoken of all of our Lord Jesus at a time where we need Jesus in the world. And anybody can understand him. And we're going to have a talk on the St. Thomas Aquinas. I think Sheen's like the modern day St. Thomas Aquinas. And Sheen was saying how much we needed St. Thomas Aquinas from the Middle Ages to deal with all the relativism of our times. Well, Sheen is the modern day St. Thomas Aquinas, and he does all of the heavy lifting for us. All of that. I mean, who could have read and studied the things that he did and never, understood it, and then take it all, and through his 66 books and thousands of articles and TV shows and stuff, to then put it where most people could understand. Because remember, 60% of his audience was non-Catholic. So we're not talking 1 billion Catholics that his beatification is going to mean. It's going to be how many others will discover it when the church announces through its, I want to call it a bully pulpit, whatever the comparable part is, its megaphone to the world saying, we have a new blessed, and he is the prophet for our times. Whoa. Just imagine if 1% of the people responded strongly to that. It would be billions of people would find out. That will help change this world and put it on the right trajectory, especially for our leaders.
Beautiful. For about 40-some years, if there's been one consistent theme I've heard from people about Bishop Sheen, because you remember through Lighthouse, we're in 9,000 parishes around the country with those cassettes and CDs and the back of churches in Fulton Sheen. The one thing I consistently hear, it's funny, in 2 weeks I'll be at a Newman Center at Cal Poly, Pomona, talking to young students about, guess what? The Holy Sacrifice of Mass by Bishop Sheen. Okay? Well, you know what they all say to me? This guy's amazing. Can I go see him? They said that over and over again. How can I go see Bishop Sheen? I said, well, actually, God called him home December 9th, 1979. But here are the recordings. And now with YouTube, it's like, let me just give you a fun story. This is how powerful this is with Bishop Sheen. That's why we not just want to get you to get your signature on that petition, but start sharing Fulton Sheen with your friends by telling them about the website and about going to, I don't even tell them anymore about, oh yeah, I got the recordings. I say, go to YouTube. You might have seen that little boy in my arms today, little Bo Thomas. I'm at the park around the block from here, Covina, on Citrus. And I do it on Mondays. I go to the park, and there's a young woman, 14 years old, writing like she's doing a report for school. And I've got my stepmother, granddaughter, Sophia, we're walking around the playground. I keep walking, and I see this little girl, and I always ask my angel, because Fulton Sheen also had a great love for his guardian angel. And my line is that the unemployment rate for guardian angels is way too high. Put her to work, right? So I put her to work, asking whether she'd be open to the gospel. So I said, and this is what Fulton Sheen, later in my talk, later in the afternoon, I'm going to give you stories of how Sheen would get into conversations. I learned a lot from him. I wrote a book called How to Share Your Faith with Anyone. It's a bestseller. Scott Hahn wrote the introduction. It's a lot of Fulton Sheen material. So here's what happened. The little 14-year-old girl said, I said, what are you writing up, young lady? She said, well, I'm doing a class on self-esteem. Because, you know, so many young people have committed suicide and they just have a low self-esteem. So I said, that's fantastic, young lady. You know, I can tell you one thing that's going to really help you understand your self-esteem. And she said, well, what's that? And I said, to know that you're a child of God and heir to the kingdom of heaven. To know the meaning and purpose of life, that's everything about self-esteem. And there's someone I want to introduce you to that can do that. Who's that? Bishop Fulton Sheen. So I get her to open up her phone, go to YouTube, type in Fulton Sheen, because she has that. Now here's the other kicker. And this is, for me, I take it from Fulton Sheen's example to evangelize. I just said to the young lady, I said, and you know, we have Bishop Sheen's Life is Worth Living on our podcast, Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And so I said, well, I want you to just Google my name. And she says, okay, and put Terry Barber, Catholic. And she sees me dressed in a nice suit. She says, this will make you laugh. Are you a congressman? I just chuckled, I laughed. I said, no, I'm a person who introduces people to Jesus Christ. And so she types it in, downloads the app, and now she's listening to Fulton Sheen, a 14-year-old person. But see, why do I tell you this? Because that's what we all have to do. Because I'm convinced if the church, you know, 80% of the young people in Italy don't believe in God. And we have a Senate going on in Rome, saving the earth. Let's save our souls. That's what Bishop Sheen's message is, and that's why it's a hard sale to tell people in the church that this man, you know, is a saint, because he's not going to compromise on the church teachings. If you get a chance to go to YouTube, I wanted to play it for you guys. About 40 days before he died, I know you've seen this video with this young woman, this older woman interviewing him, saying, Bishop Sheen, can anything change like women's prees? Oh, geez, isn't that funny? Here it is today, they're still dealing with it. And, you know, like contraception. And you see this old 84-year-old man with wisdom and says, he doesn't have the authority to do it, sweetie, even if he wanted to, but he won't. So what's the message? We need Bishop Sheen today to get us back on track in the church. Let's be honest.
And with the petition drive, it's a powerful way that we can do that, because it's something all of us can do, first individually, and then it's basically saying, well, I can find 10 people that I can share this with, and then they get 10. You start doing the multiplication factors. You know, I can share this on my social media. I can go to, like, we have an Instagram account that now is really beginning to explode, and I'm using my kids as the metric, because I don't follow all that stuff, but they're like, Papa, like, this thing is like really taken off. You know, and we got some funny stuff in there, so, you know, but we have it's really inspiring, these little clips. And that can be shared. Fulton.sheen.movement. Like, so simple, that's the @ sign, at Fulton.sheen.movement. And just start sharing those things. Because the biggest thing is you never know who the next person that's going to be touched is. We have a goal of 200,000 signatures. It'd be great if it was 1 million signatures. I mean, you think about how many people know Sheen. But the point, though, is also going to be this. It's in the whatever numbers we have 10,000 right now. We're over 10,000. we're aiming for leaders too, because they bring the one, they're following after them. And
Bishop
we're also
Strickland.
finding out who the leaders really are, because like you're not even willing to do that. You can't, like, what do you lose, even about your ego, let's just say, because we're always battling egos when you're in the leadership position. Like, what are you risking? By putting, because people say, look, if you've been presented with something, choosing not to do something is still a decision. You're not being neutral. And so you don't know who it's going to reach. Imagine getting, we're working on Bishop Strickland. We got to make sure we're going to get him on board. We want to get the bishops on board. We want them because these are the bishops who are in the wake of Sheen, that are inspired by him, who are persecuted like Sheen, and that's why the voice of we the people is so important. It's really, we are doing this for you, because what Sheen's going to bring to the church, I think is sort of unparalleled, especially for the church in the United States. And we have to begin to mine on a bigger level the treasures that he has. Although, through events like this, we are the few to say we are the initial miners to do that. What Terry's been doing, I don't know, for centuries? I don't know. Hey, he said he thought I was over 60 yesterday, so I was like, okay. But I was like, I'm like, yeah, he's the person to know. Like, what was his purpose? Or is it just to test my ego? Or I don't know. It was. I failed. But anyway, it was, but you don't know who you're going to reach. And just imagine, just like anything else, this is how the Catholic world works. It's things kind of roll, and then it gets to like a cabisal or something like that. And then all of a sudden they just say, oh, everybody, I want you to sign this. Like, he doesn't have to even have a podcast or this lengthy explanation. It's be like, hi, I'm Jim Caviezel. I want everyone to please go to this QR code, take a picture of it, and just sign the petition to support Bishop Sheen. You'd be like, you watch the counter, 100,000, 400,000. So that's kind of how I see it. We want to get the leaders, and we don't know who God is counting on us to be. Like Fulton Sheen's always talking about St. Andrew. St. Andrew's always introducing people to Jesus. We're like the St. Andrews for Sheen. We're like, hey, check this out, sign this, you can do that. Oh, that's really interesting. We got the co-owner of the Chicago Bears to sign on the spot when we had our last event, our inaugural event for Fulton Sheen. And thanks to my wife, she'll just do it. Like, he's like right here, and she's like, oh, Mr. McCaskey, would you like to sign the petition? Oh, that would be great. Oh, let's get your phone out. And he pulls out his phone, and he did it right there. It was on the thing. Last week I was in New Jersey, other coastline. And have you heard of the Immaculate of Ibiza? Mm-hmm. Have you heard of Immaculate? Mm-hmm. I didn't know how huge of a lover of Fulton Sheen she is. I knew she liked him, but when we had the minor there, she picked it up, was hugging it, and oh, my Bishop Sheen, and like, I'm more than happy she signed the petition. And so when people learn of these things, it's like you're amplifying the voice of the people. So,
very good.
Yeah.
I just want to ask before I make my comment. We're about 10 minutes to 12 right now. We got an option here. Would you like in 10 minutes to go to lunch, or I give you guys options? I'll do my 45 minutes of storytelling, of evangelization on Fulton Sheen. And then when we come back from lunch, Matt Arnold will be here to give you the modern day St. Thomas Aquinas talk. So what would you like to do? Do you want to go 10 more minutes and have lunch? Or do you want to stay another 45 minutes, get to talking, and be really hungry for lunch? Okay, so let me just throw one more thing and I'll give it back to Peter. The point is, at conferences, like we just had a big conference, many of you were there, last Saturday in Riverside, the convention center with Bishop Strickland and Father Don Calloway. Could you imagine if Peter was there at a booth with his wife, asking people to sign up at those things? Those are the kinds of things we want to do to get people to, get support. So if you have a large event going on, like the SCRC coming up in September, ones, give some money to them so they can buy a booth, right? And, maybe sell us books and do a little bit of that, but mostly, I can't see people not wanting to sign a petition about Fulton Sheen when it's as easy as it's eyeball to eyeball. That seems to be a great way to get people to do it now, rather than, I'll go to the website and I'll do it. So what I would encourage you to do is when you do talk to people, it's the same thing I do with the card. I have a little card for a free app for Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Maybe you guys might want to put a little card.
Oh, it's right out there. Right out there.
Card, okay.
Yep.
They're out there. And everybody take them homes. And then you just do it right on the spot so they can download and get right online to do it. So those are some things. The only other thing I would mention about Bishop Sheen's beatification, that also I mentioned how Bishop Sheen wasn't welcomed so much with his brother bishops. Let me tell you what he did that I think gives your heart of what Fulton Sheen was about. During the Second Vatican Council, there were 2,117 bishops. There was one bishop around the world who spoke longer than any other bishop in the world. They didn't shut him off with the buzzer. That was Fulton Sheen. Now, what he told his brother bishops from America probably didn't go over too well, but this is what he said. In the bus, they would bus the bishops in every day for the council. And he'd stay in a hotel. And Bishop Sheen said, fellas, I think we're doing a terrible job. What? Why? He said, we don't have a chapel at the hotel where the Blessed Sacrament would be reserved for us to make holy hours. This is becoming difficult. They run us in to Rome, we do our presentations or whatever we're doing, then we go back to the hotel. We need a chapel. So he instituted a chapel, he went and went to the hotel room, so we need an extra room, and then he set it up so that the bishops that he was with had a Blessed Sacrament chapel so that they could make their daily holy hour. Were you aware of that? I knew that from a friend who was a Monsignor, was a secretary for Bishop Sheen, and he told him that story. But you see, why do I tell that story? This guy's, he had zeal, right? And he made people without zeal uncomfortable, like some of the bishops today who want to talk about other things than salvation. I mean, we're living in times where a new cardinal from China said, we don't share the faith to have people become Catholic. We just want them to have a better life. Excuse me, Cardinal, you're missing the boat. Bishop Sheen will get us back on track. I keep saying that we need to push Fulton Sheen in the church. It's the best thing you can do to renew the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Well, I guess we're wrapping up here, and a couple of things too that stood out for me. With Terry was saying, Sheen crosses every single camp that's out there. Everything's factionalized now. We have your trads, your TLMs, your charismatics, your Novus Ordos. I mean, I think the traditional ones probably get everybody to all the labels, but Sheen, it's interesting, but they all love Sheen. And it's interesting, I think the more they dive into Sheen, they have to find themselves challenged, because Sheen was pre, during, post, he was with the church. And because things haven't been implemented right, doesn't make something wrong. And this is one of the battles that we have. So like this petition movement too, invite everyone. People are like, I love Sheen. Even non-Catholics could even be signing this. So spread that out. And like Terry said too, we actually do those little QR codes. So in the fancy age, you just say, hey, put out your camera, and then it takes you right to the actual petition and you sign it. So you can have one on you all the time. You don't necessarily have to give it out, because like Terry said, if you give it out, they probably won't use it. So hey, you have to do this right now, put your camera out. It's like, what are they going to do? They might feel a little awkward, but they'll do it. You be patient. So there's lots of things that we can do. And of course, like Terry said too, we want to be able to explain tasting does not take very much. Just say, this is awesome, life change. You can even be a little bit vague, sign the petition, because like, people will probably sign that. Like, what is that about? Anyway, whatever tactic, the point is, just do the multiplication factors. We could double 10,000 in like a day if we had, if we were able to get even a fraction of those. If 1,000 of those reach 10 more people, we just doubled it. So, thank you first and foremost for being here. You're carving out this day. I firmly believe that the events that we do, any event that's with Fulton Sheen, the people who are there, are being led by the Holy Spirit for something special in our times, because we have a crisis of leadership. And that leadership isn't just in the hierarchical sense, which is very true. It's leadership in our families, it's leadership in our workplaces, leadership in our Catholic groups. We have to live like we never have before. And when it comes to when you hear about, we're going to wait for the timing to be right for Sheen's beatification. Sheen has a great quote that I love. He says, right is right if nobody's right. Wrong is wrong if everybody is wrong. And what we need is a church that's right, not when the world is right, but a church that's right when the world is wrong. So when the world is wrong, we need a saint not when everything's right. We need a Saint Fulton Sheen, a blessed Fulton Sheen, especially when the world is wrong. So let's let that be something that galvanizes us. So thank you, Terry, for this opportunity and for everybody who's participated to make this a wonderful day. So thanks.
Thanks. I hope that